So one coach already fired. Could more be on the way? For more on this conversation, joining us is our coach. We would never fire him, Bill Cowher. But to send off and start this conversation, let's send it over to Nate Burleson.
All right, Amanda, thank you so much. All right, so the Titans, they joined a long list of teams firing a head coach with a young superstar, well, hopefully soon to be superstar quarterback. You know, AP, I want to start with you because you have lived this, you've been through it as a player, but actually as a coach. What do you make of this situation and this trend that's happening?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's just tough whenever anybody gets fired. I think we got to be more sensitive with that subject because it's not just affecting just the head coach, but it affects the assistant coaches, people in the building, the players, families, everybody outside the building that you don't really think about.
That's a good point.
But when you're in the fire, and it happened to me. We fired Josh McDaniels after week 8, and it's on a Wednesday or a Tuesday night, and you're getting ready for a game on Sunday. The preparation and the mindset, everything goes through your head so fast, right? And you're trying to like scramble. One, just to rally the troops.
Yeah.
Because it's an emotional time for everybody involved, regardless of the record. Nobody cares about the personal part of all this, and the people part of this is the most important part.
Right.
Because it's the people business.
Yeah.
But I think when you're in it, then you put that hat on, right? You become the interim head coach, and you put the hat on. The first thing first is you get your staff together, right? You get everybody, make sure they're together. And then for me, I got the building together. When I say the building, everybody, the cafeteria, the equipment, the training room. I mean, anybody that touched the players or touched the staff, I wanted to touch first.
Because everybody's thinking about their jobs and their livelihood.
And they're worried about it.
Right.
And then you're looking at that team meeting. And what is that like the first time you walk in? What do you say to your team? And they got to believe. You got to put belief, hope, and give them something to look forward to.
Because a lot of guys are sitting there saying all is lost.
Yeah, it's over. Pack the bags, right? Get the U-Haul.
Especially if it's a veteran. If you don't have the veterans, you don't have the young guys.
Yeah. And it's so hard now. We're talking about 6 weeks into the season.
Yeah.
And you're a young quarterback, right? You're #1 pick, and this is the guy that drafted you, and you want to play for him, and now you're Cam Ward. You're sitting there saying, well, damn.
Yeah.
This the league?
Yeah. 100%. It slaps you right across the face, right? As a young player, that this is the reality of how the NFL works. People are, whether it's players too, back into the roster, you can be cut at any time, right? Coaches being fired. The trend, right? We're seeing the trend now. The last 4 #1 overall drafted quarterbacks, their head coach has been fired in their first season. You think back all the way to Trevor Lawrence when Urban Meyer was there in Jacksonville, and you think back to Bryce Young with Frank Wright, Matt Eberflus, and Caleb Williams last year. I don't know what to make of it, though. I think of it from the quarterback's perspective, right? Caleb looks better right now, right? And so it is really difficult. You said there's that personal element to it. And you don't want to see guys get fired and the families and all of those things, but organizations have to make decisions that are really difficult. And I think when you look at Chicago, I think they probably made the right decision and the timing that they did it, because you do take that quarterback #1 overall, and if your gut is that it's not right around them, this is the most important piece of your football team moving forward for the next 5 or 6 years. You want to be able to surround them with a coaching staff that can do it. I don't like the trend of firing coaches during the middle of the season. I find it very difficult to overcome that, particularly with this much time left on the season. But I think it is interesting to look at that. You see Bryce Young's playing a little bit better right now. Dave Canales has steadied the ship, and that's been a rocky road, but they have steadied that ship. They're at 500. Trevor Lawrence has had a number of different coaches up until this point, but looks like he has steadied the ship with Liam Cohen as well.
And I'll say this, I think, AP, you did as well of a job as anybody has stepped in an interim position.
No doubt about it.
Absolutely. And I think when you sat in front of that room, the fact that you played at a high level, you were a captain of a Super Bowl team, you knew what championship pedigree looked like, what DNA looked like. So, you know, you did that job.
And that locker room believed in him.
Totally believed in him. And I think, again, if you don't have stability at the top, when you have multiple titles, you have multiple conflicts, in my opinion, because there's too many chefs in the kitchen, and everybody wants their own guy. And we sit there and look at Tennessee. They've had Rand Carthen and Mike Pogazzi, then Chad Brinker. There's 3 guys, and, you know, like, who's making the final decision? It starts at the top. You know, Marty Schottenheimer said one thing to me. He said the 3 most important people in the organization: the owner, the owner, and the owner. and so, you know what? The bottom line is, as you go in, and I think at some of these things with some of these quarterbacks playing better, the game slows down too in your second and third year.
Yeah.
So, and if you get a guy who also, that it's another system, and the guy who comes in. So that, I don't know if there's a correlation, but I just think the instability that you have in the front office, you'll find instability at head coach, and it just trickles down. It trickles down into your organization. And so I go back to the same thing. I mean, there's got to be transparency. I think as a head coach, as you sit there and talk about what you're doing, I know the first thing I always make sure is I don't want our owner to read about it in the paper. If I'm going to bench a guy, just let you know, I'm going to bench a guy, and I'm not sure what his reaction is going to be, but I think it's the best interest of our team. And it's really in the best interest of him.
Yeah.
He just doesn't know it right now, but he needs to kind of sit back and watch this game from a different perspective. And so there is that element of communication that has to exist throughout the building.
Yeah.
And when you start to go through losing, it starts to fragment a building. People start to close their doors. People start to go in and try to protect their space. And I think the other thing you got to worry about when you come in as interim coaches are the assistant coaches. Because all of a sudden now they're on the phones.
100%.
Because they're saying, hey,
Everybody's
listen.
searching for a job.
Everybody.
They're planning their exit strategy.
Yeah, that's it.
Well, and the other thing you have to think about, and I dealt with this as a player because I dealt with a few head coaches getting fired in Chicago. When you come into the league, you don't expect all that turmoil. All you're worried about is assignment, alignment, adjustment. And then at the end of the year, the guy who drafted you is out of the building. And you have to reintroduce yourself to the new staff. So what is that going to look like for Cam Ward moving forward? Not only are we going to learn about the ownership, but we're going to learn about this young player, Cam Ward, and how he responds to a new coach.
That's what they were saying. Like, nobody loves it like your mama.
Yeah.
And then your mama's not in the building anymore, and you're like, where do I fit in as a player? The one thing I would want to ask you guys as coaches, AP and Coach, like from a player's perspective, I think there's certain organizations that players would want to go play for because they handle things the right way.
Yeah.
I'm like, okay, if you're a head coach, are there certain organizations, because as Marty Schottenheimer said, it's the owner, it's the owner, it's the owner. You know, what kind of mindset do you have to have as certain jobs come open, right? And being selective, if you can be, as a head coach, because like, what are you doing?
And that's easy to say.
Yeah.
But when you have an opportunity to be a head coach,
Take it.
you don't pass it up. I mean, because there's only so many opportunities that are out there. And
Right.
you always feel like you can make the difference. You can have the impact that they're looking for. But there are some places that you have to just be realistic about what you're dealing with. Because the biggest thing you have to do is, what is the dynamic of the building?
Right.
Who am I answering to? Is it the assistant football operations? Is it the GM?
Right.
Is it the owner? I just want to know what the lineage is, and where do I go if I want to share my information, have transparency. What is the dynamic in the building?
Yeah.
And sometimes I think less is better. I said before, too many titles, there's too many conflicts, communication gets misinterpreted, and so it just leads to a lot of breakdowns, which lead to firings.
Well, I think to your point, right, if we think about the organizations that have been consistently good for the last 10 or 15 years,
Yeah.
it's one person in charge.
And that's it.
There's clear marching orders from one person.
And there's also stability. You know, you mentioned the word transparency. Here's a moment of transparency for me. In my career, I was a free agent twice. I was chasing the money. So I always went to the highest bidder. There were a couple of teams that were interested. They weren't going to pay me as much as I thought my value was in the free market. And it was the Patriots and the Steelers. And I look back post-career, and there's times where I struggle with that cross-section of my life. Would I go back and make the same decision? Or would I go to a team like the Patriots, take a little less, or go to a team like the Pittsburgh Steelers, knowing that there isn't a carousel of quarterbacks.
Right.
Yep.
There isn't this turnover of coaches. They have stability, which we know in this league, oftentimes when you have stability, you have a better chance of finding success in this league. And this comes all the way back around full circle to these young quarterbacks.
Exactly.
When you have this turnover, new voices, new system, harder to learn the playbook. It puts them in a position where they're stagnant in the first part of their career, and then they have to figure it out after.
And I just say this, one of the things that to say to the players as they entered free agency in our year-end meetings, I said, just want you to do one thing. Put a price on going to a building that you enjoy walking into.
every
No
day.
doubt.
You know what? There's a price of happiness that you put a monetary value on, because
No doubt.
honestly, if you're a part of something special, you're not going to be the only one.
No
We're
doubt.
all going to be special in here, which means we're all going to be treated similarly to some degree. So make sure you put a monetary price on happiness.
Yeah.
Look, she's happy.
Of walking into a
Hey.
building. Very good, serious conversation. But, Coach, I got to talk to you. Nate, you can be a part of this as well.
Okay, what's up?
Did Matt embarrass you guys last week?
By
When he
cramping
cramped
up?
Like, was that embarrassing?
Well,
Your teammate just being weak?
Yeah.
I thought he blamed it on what he had to drink that morning.
I know, the coffee.
But no, it wasn't the coffee.
That's what I said.
It was the M&M. What was that? The
Yeah.
That's right.
We have
Chocolate water.
We have some video of when that was
First of all, it was not the coffee or the imminent. Hey. Hey.
What do you think it was?
Hey, you got to
Windmill.
Hey, man, you got some good hips.
Play that guitar, man.
You got that?
Yeah,
You get